Okay, we're about to get started. So welcome to Break the Silence and Start the Healing. My name is DJ Vader from 100.3 Cincy's Best R&B, and I am your moderator for the day. And I hope that we'll have a good time learning about these incredible issues that's in our communities. And I would like to take the time to introduce esteemed guests and colleagues, Dr. Angela Scott and Catherine Hamner. And I'll let you talk. I mean, this is your show. I'm just here.
Hi, so I guess I'll start us off. I am Dr. Angela Scott. I am a psychologist in the Division of Behavioral Medicine and Clinical Psychology at Children's Hospital. I actually work right up at our Liberty campus, which is if you keep on down 75, you'll find me. And I work with a lot of kids and teenagers around these kind of mental health issues. And so I thought it was so exciting to get the opportunity to just come and share some information with you about, the difference between, what mental distress is versus mental illness, and to kind of just give you some general strategies for how to, cope a little bit better and understand a little bit more about mental health, and hopefully with our overall goal of just reducing some of the stigma around that. So I'm just really excited to be here and to provide my expertise as much as I can.
All right. Catherine.
Hi, Catherine Hamner. Also working with Cincinnati Children's Hospital. The program is Adapt for Life. I go out into the high schools and talk about mental health. We talk about stress management, and then also how that is related to suicide. So it is a suicide awareness program, but we talk about those coping mechanisms and behaviors that teenagers can use to get through stressful times. The name of the program is Adapt for Life because stress happens for the rest of your life. So it's not just in your teenage years, though we know that is a hard time for a lot of individuals. But we want to talk about how we can adapt and get through the stress for the rest of our lives. So I'm very excited to be here today as we talk about the stigma in the Black community, because mental health is real, and it is something that we must talk about and must get help for.
Absolutely. And I want to say one more time, I'm so thankful for the work that you all do. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So today, our objective for today is to learn to change the conversation about mental health by breaking the silence. And we're going to understand the relationship between mental health and mental disorder or mental illness. Okay. And then we're going to gain some tips on caring for your mental health, which is really essential. So these celebrities that you see right here, we got Brandon Marshall, we got The Rock, we got Beyonce, Dr. Martin Luther King, Alicia Keys, and Will Smith. They have some things in common. Other than being African American, let me tell you. So Alicia Keys, Alicia Keys, the Grammy-winning actress and singer. She found it hard to tell herself about her battle with depression. In her own words, she said, "I was feeling so sad all the time, and I couldn't shake it. I started burying my feelings, and it got to the point where I couldn't even tell my family or friends. I'm twisted, I'm exhausted, or I'm so angry. I became a master of putting up the wall so it was unreadable." How many of you can relate with that? And Beyonce, of course, she is Mrs. Everything. She opened up about her mental health journey, about post-pregnancy and the struggles of being a working mother and having to balance it all, in addition to learning to love herself for more than just the physical. All right. And we all know The Rock, is known for his charm and his 1,000-watt smile. The Rock, or Dwayne Johnson, discussed his darker moments with depression starting in his 20s. He says, "I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I didn't want to do anything." He said that he got through depression by realizing that he wasn't alone. And Will Smith, we know Will Smith, Mr. Everything the second. Well, actually the first, because The Rock came after Will. Okay. The actor's family has discussed his battle with alcohol on an episode of his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith's Red Table Talks. Though the actor admitted to not drinking for over 10 years, critics speculate that with Will Smith's career slowing down some, drinking now fills his downtime. Think about that. And Martin Luther King, do you think he had stress? I'm sure that he did. Despite being one of the most widely researched leaders of modern times, very little is ever written about him and his experience with depression. A 1968 Time magazine profile of him notes that he twice attempted to commit suicide before the age of 13, following the death of his grandmother. He suffered several bouts of severe depression, and shortly before he was assassinated, his staff even tried to get him psychiatric treatment, which he turned down. But it was one of the characteristics often found in people who suffer from depression, an extreme form of empathy that drove the civil rights leader to achieve all that he did. Addressing a conference of psychologists in 1967, he dismissed their desire to always cure maladjustment. He says, there are some things concerning which we must always be maladjusted if we are to be people of goodwill. And finally, in the bottom right-hand corner, Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall is a wide receiver for the New York Giants and founder of the mental health initiative, Project 375. He opened up about his ongoing experience with borderline personality disorder in 2015. He says, we need to accept that mental illness is a disease, and like any other disease, it needs stronger research, early screening, and treatment, especially for young people. So, you are not alone if you've ever had any type of stress or depression.
All right, thank you for that. So as we jump into our presentation, first we want to talk about what mental health is. So there's lots of different words that we hear, whether it is illness, whether it's a condition, whether it's a disability. But a lot of these words that we hear in society, words like crazy, demented, nuts, deranged, psychotic, let's just think about those words for a minute. Would you all think that those words are something that someone would want connected with them? Are they something positive that someone would want to go around and tell someone, hey, I'm psychotic? I would venture to say that the answer is no. So what these words here do is set up a stigma. So next slide. When we talk about mental health and use those negative words, next slide, it sets up this stigma. And what a stigma is, it's the perceived negative attribute that causes someone to devalue or to think less of a whole person. So it's a set of negative and often unfair beliefs that society has about a group of people or something. So those negative words have a stigma. And as I said, in the Black community and the African American community, this stigma is there that we don't talk about mental health. We maybe even say that we're just going to pray it off. We're going to get through those things. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to get through it. And we don't get the help that is needed. We don't even talk about it. So what we are here to do, here today to do, is to talk about that stigma, talk about ways that we can get through that stress and get the help that is needed. So DJ Beta already said, you're not alone. That is the biggest takeaway that we have for today. That's the biggest takeaway that we have for the Adapt for Life program. You're not alone. You have those celebrities that are dealing with mental health issues. You have, it could be your best friend. It could be someone in your family. Don't ever think that what you are going through, no one has ever experienced, because the truth is it could be something the exact same. They could be in the exact same situation, feeling the exact same way that you are. But if we don't talk about it, there's no help that we can give you. So please, please, please remember that you're not alone.
All right, so I'll kind of get us started with the discussion of what mental health is. And when we say you're not alone, that really is true, because when we think about what mental health actually is, the most important thing to remember is that everybody does have mental health. So when we think about mental health and what it reflects, it's our emotional functioning, like how well are you doing with your emotions? It's your psychological functioning. This could include a number of different things, your thought processes, even down to like how your memory are processing, your processing speed, how you're learning, interpreting information. And then it also has to do with your social well-being, which is basically how you're interacting with the world and people around you. So your mental health really includes overall, how you're doing. When we think about how mental health affects things, your mental health is going to affect how you handle stress, how you interact with other people. It's also going to affect how you make decisions. One thing that we do know is that, when you're dealing with some kind of mental disorder or mental illness, it really does affect the way you think about the world and the way that you process or interpret situations. And we do know that that then in turn affects the way that you feel, and how you feel ultimately affects the way that you react in situations and behave. So it's so important to know what the status of your mental health is, so that if you are having some difficulty with the way that you're coping with or managing different stressors and your decision making and your interactions with other people. It'll tell you a lot about how you're doing. So when we think about, what's the difference between your mental health and, kind of when does it lean more into more so like mental illness? So you want to think about your mental health as kind of being like on a spectrum. So if you look at the left side of the screen there, you can be in a state of mental well-being, which means that overall you're coping well, you're managing your stressors. There's not a lot of, issues or difficulty that you're having with coping with the demands of your daily life. And then, of course, you can move towards the middle, which is what we consider to be like mental distress. And these are situations that can cause you to move out of your kind of zone of well being and feeling good to feeling like you're under some distress. And this can happen, within the course of a day. You can start out having a great morning, and then by afternoon, you realize that, you had this test that you didn't study for at school. And so now you're in a state of mental distress or, anxiety about that. So being in a state of mental distress really can be situational, can vary throughout the day or throughout the week or throughout a course of months. So that is kind of just a manner of like how you're doing or dealing with the coping with the stressors in your life. Now, when we start leaning more towards the right side of that, spectrum, which is where we start to look at more mental illness, this is when we start going into more of like disordered thinking. This is when you have a prolonged period of time when you're, experiencing down mood or anxious thoughts, and you are experiencing some difficulty in your functioning, how well you're getting through your day, or unable to get through your day. So that's when we start looking at things as being more so disabled or like disordered. And so, and you can be anywhere on this spectrum, depending on your environmental factors, what's happening in your life, and kind of how you're doing. So when we think about mental health, everyone has it. It just depends on where you fall on that spectrum at any given time in your life. And you can spend some time on at either place on that spectrum based on your stressor. And then when we look specifically at mental illness in teens, when we say you're not alone, that is absolutely true. There's actually 1 in 5 teenagers here in the US that do suffer from some kind of mental disorder. So when you think about that, that is really common. That's almost as common as the occurrence of like diabetes in the population. So that is pretty significant. So if you're sitting in your classroom or if you're, in your school setting and you look around and, you have 20, 30 people in your classroom, you can pretty much guarantee that at least one or more or a few other people sitting around you are also dealing with some form of mental illness or mental disorder. So when we say you're not alone, you really are not alone in that regard. When we think about what's most common among teenagers, definitely anxiety and depression seem to be pretty common. And then we also see folks who have like OCD and ADHD.
Like the topics that we have for October, November, December. Actually, the November is Thanksgiving, December is Christmas.
Okay.
So, but there are some object lessons that would work.
All right. So next slide, please. So when we think about factors that are going to impact or affect mental health for teenagers, they actually did a study. It's called the Pew Research Center Survey. And this was for people between the ages of 13 and 17. And they wanted to see, what is creating stress or what are factors that are impacting or affecting teenagers' mental health. And one of the biggest factors, if you look at that bottom line where it says academic, that's about 60 some odd percent of teenagers are reporting that they're feeling pressured in that area. So if you're someone who's also experiencing some, stress around your schoolwork and, feeling that pressure for achievement and things like that, you are not alone. There are many, many, many teenagers who are also endorsing that that is a big stressor for them. And then, of course, that's followed up by concerns for your appearance, how you're doing with your own, how happy you are with your body, with yourself, your own self-image. And then, of course, fitting in, feeling like, some pressure to feel like you have to, conform to or fit into certain groups. Some folks are feeling pressure around their extracurricular activities. If we have any athletes on here, or folks who engage in other really competitive, activities. This can be really a big stressor for folks, especially if you're more in like the competition side of things. And, these days there is a lot of pressure for my teenagers to be super high achieving, not just high achieving academically, but also high achieving in your sport. So when you're trying to balance both of those things together, can create quite a bit of stress as well. And then, of course, there's stressors related to alcohol and drugs and things like that. And really, we think about it, we do a lot of intervention, I feel like, through the schools for drugs and alcohol, like don't do drugs, don't drink alcohol. But honestly, the biggest stressor that we're finding that folks are dealing with really seems to center around academics. So I thought that was a little bit surprising for me to see, that something that impacts teens the most is not necessarily the things that I think as adults we tend to worry about more of, which is like drugs and alcohol, but more so just the things that you do every day, which is your academics and your extracurricular activities and things like that. And then,
Dr. Scott,
yeah,
I
go
got a
ahead.
question for you. So, how do you think this chart changes with the pandemic and the teenagers being home and trying to figure it all out? Do you think that this changes things?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure if we were to do this survey today, you'd likely see, concerns for COVID-19 and social isolation and quarantine and all of that being listed as one of the biggest stressors. You'd likely also see, in our environment right now of social unrest and racial unrest in this country. There is a huge focus right now on that. And I can guarantee you that if we were to survey teens these days, these are factors that, teenagers of the past, maybe along the racial lines and things like that. But as far as like this pandemic that we're dealing with, these are
Hmm.
stressors that teens have not typically had to confront or to, kind of face head on. And so definitely I would expect, if we were to, to look at that, you'd likely see, the pandemic and, this environment of racial unrest ranking right up there with academics.
Thank you.
All right, so Dr. Scott hit on a lot of the stressors that we all have, and I have had some teens tell me, "Oh, I don't have stress. I don't get stressed out." And you may not get overwhelmed. You may feel like you have it all together, but everyone experiences stress because what stress is how your brain or your body responds to a demand. So when we say a demand, we mean every type of stress or every type of demand. So that's exercise because that is a demand on your body, on your muscles, on your bones. That is a stressor. Whether you are working or going to school, major life events that come along, that stress, traumatic events. We talked about some of that racial unrest and traumatic things that have happened, even with COVID. Even small events, if it's over an extended period of time, all those things can be stressful. And I always use the example with the small events. If you are sitting in school, or were sitting in school pre-COVID, and you had someone sitting behind you, and they maybe kicked your desk, kicked the leg of your desk every day. That might be okay once, and then they do it every day, then they do it all week, then they do it all semester. That can be kind of stressful for you. So a small event over an extended period of time, that is considered a stressor also. Now, stress affects all of us, and not all stress is bad. We said that exercise is a stressor on your body, but it's not bad. We know that there are benefits of stressing. But when you have long term stress, it can be harmful to your health. There are ways that you can manage your stress, and when you're overwhelmed, you have to remember to reach out, and that's what we're talking about today. So, what are some things that allow us to know that we're stressed? Maybe Dr. Scott can help us with that.
So the things that we kind of look to see, how we're dealing with or managing our stress. One thing to remember is that your brain and your body are very connected. So if you're experiencing like physical symptoms that aren't really explained by, things that are happening around you, like if you haven't injured yourself or you're not sick or have some kind of medical condition that could be leading to some of these symptoms that you see listed, then you likely may have something that's more linked to something mental health based that's going on, some sort of distress that's creating these, kind of physical symptoms that you're experiencing. So things like muscle tension and headaches. I don't know if you've ever been so stressed out that you've gotten a headache, or folks who get really nervous to the point where they feel sick to their stomach, or some people may even throw up, and things like, feeling tingly, flushed, having a difficult time with breathing or having your heart pounding. Even some folks have experienced, up to the level where they feel like they're having more so of a panic attack. So when we think about that connection, the brain and the body are very, very much connected. And so a lot of times, even if we're not acknowledging, things like sadness, worry, anxiety, the fact that we're feeling unhappy, if we're disappointed, if we're feeling embarrassed or angry, even if we're not mentally acknowledging that, or kind of paying attention to those symptoms, likely if you pay really close attention to your body and how it feels, your body will tell you when you're under distress. So if you're feeling tired or just kind of run down, unmotivated, a lot of times that is a signal or a sign that your body's trying to give you to let you know that you are under some mental distress, and that's something to pay attention to. So there are some signs and signals, and if you pay really close attention, you'll see some of those. All
So
right.
while we're
Go ahead.
going back, how many people that's on this call have felt any of those? Have you ever had the stomach aches? You just didn't know why. It wasn't necessarily from something that you ate, or headaches out the blue. It'll be nice to know that it's connected with stress, and how many people that's on the line have actually experienced that. So sorry.
I'll raise my hand to answer that. Yes, I have. And that's why it's so important that we listen to our brain and our body, because they're connected. We go so much. And then, our body will tell us. If you're not going to listen to your brain to tell you that you're stressed out, your body will show you in some type of way that there is stress going on, and you need to slow down and listen.
Absolutely.
Right. So now we're going to talk about how we can cope and deal with the stressors that we have. So we can't stop stress. We don't know when stress is going to happen. We don't know what it's going to be. But what we can choose is how we are going to react and how we're going to behave when we have those stressors. So that is adaptive and maladaptive coping behaviors is what we're going to get into now. So what an adaptive coping behavior is, it's a healthy and helpful way that you behave. These adaptive coping mechanisms, they are healthy. They help you to adjust to your situations in life. They enable you to have positive and successful outcomes. However, if you use maladaptive coping behaviors, they are more harmful than helpful. They can inhibit your ability to adjust to healthily to particular situations, and they can lead to dysfunction and non-productive outcomes. So yes, that's a great definition, but let's break it down and look at some of the examples of what would be adaptive and maladaptive. So adaptive would be those things like listening to music, talking with someone, whether it's your friend or a parent, maybe it's someone else in your family, hanging out with your friends, taking a good nap. And I know not only for me when I was growing up, I do it with my own children, and your parents might do it for you. They might just say, go take a nap. You need a nap. You've had a long day. Like, you've had too many stressors, whether it's your friends not talking to you or me getting on you, just go take a nap. So that's adaptive. Exercise, sports, physical activity, hobbies, things that you like to do, whether that's painting or taking photographs, thinking positive, right? We'll get into what the opposite of that is, but you want to think positive, have an optimistic look on things. Prayer and religion, I know that's big in the community, the Black community. Talking to your parents, reading, writing, journaling, trying to problem solve. Because if we have an issue, if we have a stressor, if we don't do anything about it, it's not just going to go away. So trying to think of a way, whether it's who I need to talk to, what I need to do, what steps I need to take to get through this, problem solving would be considered adaptive. Yoga, meditation, and then also support groups, whether it is professional support groups, whether it is a support group at school, whether it is a faith-based community support group. Find someone and a group, someone that you can talk to that can help you get through the stress that you have. Now, on the other hand, maladaptive behaviors would be things like isolation. And for the next couple ones, I'm going to kind of tell you, isolation is different than just needing a break. When you have had a lot going on, sometimes you just need some time by yourself, go in your room, go for a walk. That's not considered isolation. Isolation is, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be with anyone. And that goes on for more than a day, more than a week. Eating comfort food. Eating comfort food is not having a bad day and you go to Wendy's and get a Frosty and some French fries and dip it, right? You just want to feel better for that day. And nothing's wrong with that. But if you find yourself doing that every day for weeks and months and it turns into something that you need, that would be considered maladaptive. Yelling, screaming, lashing out. So we've all maybe screamed into a pillow, just was walking, just, you had to get it out. That's okay. But when you are yelling at people, you are screaming at others, when you're lashing out and doing things that are not positive or not They're not going to help you to get through your stress. They have consequences behind them that would be considered maladaptive. And you don't want to avoid those problems because they're not going to go away. Dangerous thrill seeking, smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, getting into fights, using drugs, verbal self abuse. Sometimes we beat up on ourselves more than other people do. That is maladaptive. Just like we might eat that comfort food, there are others on the other hand that restrict their calories. They may binge and purge. They blame others, and everything is someone else's fault. When actually we need to take time to problem solve and figure out what's going on. Wishful thinking, self harm, whether that's cutting, whether that's burning, all of those things are harmful to your health. They are not healthy for you, and they are maladaptive coping behaviors.
Now, Catherine, as I'm reading this, and I'm sure as others are reading, you know, I like to talk to friends. I like to listen to music and hang out. And I definitely love to problem solve. But on the other side, I'm not perfect. I have, you know, I eat comfort food sometimes, maybe more than I should. And what I'm saying is that anyone that's watching, we are all not perfect. And we want to let you know that we're coming from a place of love, that you're not alone. And also, I got a question for you, Dr. Scott, from one of the people that's watching. They asked if you are a medicine prescribing provider. The person that asked is a parent of a teen registered for this event. She doesn't feel comfortable sharing her mental health concerns with her pediatrician.
Got it. No, so I don't prescribe. I'm a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, but we do have providers that we refer to within our division. So typically, if I do have a patient who would be needing medication, I would work with them on more of the therapy side of things, and then we'd refer them over to psychiatry, which at Liberty, we're all in the same department, so you could be coming to the same place. But yeah, so you can get referred over to psychiatry where they can prescribe and manage medications. So you'd meet with them maybe like once every couple months or so, just to kind of keep up with your meds, and then you'd see me for more of an ongoing therapy basis.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So now we get to signs and symptoms. So this is leaning more into the side of like if this is clinical or not, right? So we talked about how everybody experiences stress and everybody can go through stages or states of mental distress. But really, what I want to hit on are symptoms that you might be experiencing that are kind of red flags that might, allude you to the fact that this may be more mental illness or mental disorder that you might be experiencing. And so I'll just kind of walk you through some of these symptoms. Things like excessive worrying. So you are going to go through periods likely, anxiety is just a part of our lives where you might worry about things from time to time. But if you find that you worry about everything and all the time, that is kind of a red flag or a signal that this may be something that is more clinical that's going on and not so much just, mental distress. Things like irritable mood or feeling angry. If you're someone who's really easily frustrated by situations, having really low frustration tolerance, sometimes that can be an indicator for either like a mood issue or, also anxiety as well. Avoiding social situations or social interactions. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about with isolating. This isn't, if you need some downtime or, to kind of take some time on your own to relax, but this is like an ongoing, like I just can't seem to bring myself to engage with others, even if you might want to, or you might have a desire to do that, you just kind of tend to stay on your own. So that can kind of be a little bit of a red flag that there might be something like that going on. Other things are just sad or down mood. So if you find yourself feeling just overall sadness and that kind of stays, like it doesn't really ever go away, it's not in response to any specific stressor. It just kind of is a state of the way that you feel. That can be a big red flag of something more serious or clinical going on. Fatigue, just feeling tired most of your day, even if you're getting appropriate sleep, that can be another big sign that you're under some distress. Having difficult time with concentration and focus. If you find yourself at school and you just can't seem to get your brain to focus on what you're doing, and even if you, have tried some of the strategies where you're like, okay, I'm going to make sure I've got enough sleep and I'm going to make sure that I'm like, geared up and ready to go for the day. But as soon as you sit down, you just can't seem to get your brain to stay on task. That can be a sign of some mental illness or mental disorder. Being easily overwhelmed. If you find that even the smallest thing, like it can set you off, or the smallest thing can just seem like it's too much for you, that's another sign that there could be something more clinical going on. Sleep problems. So if you find yourself either having issues falling asleep, staying asleep, or if you're sleeping excessively. So it could be where you're sleeping, most of the day, or if you're having a hard time just staying asleep. Some people are having sleep disturbances. So if you're experiencing nightmares, or, just kind of frequently waking up throughout the night, all of that can be a sign that there is some distress that you're dealing with that could lean more on the side of being mental illness. Low motivation. And this is not just, everybody goes through periods of low motivation. I mean, that happens to me as well, where you're just kind of like, I just don't want to deal with this right now. I'm going to do this right now. But I mean, this is low motivation to where, like, you're in a period of distress. You know there are things that you need to get done. You know what you need to do to get those things done, but you just lack the motivation. You can't seem to get or work up the motivation to do the things that you know you need to do in order to be successful. So that kind of captures more of like that clinical level low motivation. Other things are when you feel worthless or inferior. So this is like an ongoing state of just negative self-evaluation, just negative view of self, negative view of your abilities and your way of living, just kind of feeling like you're just not up to par. If that is a sustained kind of period or a sustained, kind of way of thinking or way of being, that can also be a sign of a mental disorder. Also, we talked about those physical symptoms, right? So if your body is showing you that you are under distress, if you notice any of those symptoms, kind of what we outlined before, that's also a big sign or symptom. And then, of course, panic attacks. If you're having full-on panic attacks, which is states where you feel like you're having rapid breathing, having a hard time, catching your breath, your heart rate's racing, and you can't, seem to get calmed down. Those are definitely a big signal or sign that this is more mental illness as opposed to just overall mental distress or stress that you might be dealing
Now, Dr. Scott, um, there was a second part of the question that I don't think was addressed. If
with.
someone that's watching this, that's a teenager, doesn't feel comfortable talking to their own pediatrician, what can they do?
Got it. So you can definitely talk to other people in your life that you trust, that you feel like can get you to the right place. So if you don't feel comfortable talking to your regular doctor about these concerns, you can certainly reach out to like your teachers at school or your guidance counselor at your school, especially if you have like a school psychologist. Those folks are definitely trained to, help you with what you need and or either to get you referred over to where you need to go. You can also obviously talk to your parents about those things, and then maybe your parents can advocate for you if you don't feel comfortable like directly talking to your provider about that. You can also talk to some folks who work through their church, to religious leaders, things like that. If you have like a person that you have a relationship with or connection with, you can certainly talk to those folks. And a lot of them are trained to identify mental disorder, mental illness, and have referral resources that they can get you over to the right place. There's tons of like hotlines you can call as well, and we'll get to some of those resources towards the end of our presentation. We have a ton of just like text lines, hotlines that you can text or call. There's also, of course, our information for children's that you can contact. And so there's tons of different resources that are out there. So, like we said, you're not alone if you don't feel comfortable talking to just your basic PCP, that there are many, many ways to get access to help. And to get kind of funneled to the right person, depending on who you talk to. But it starts with the first step is just reaching out. If you can, take that first step, and I know that for a lot of folks that's really, really hard. But if you can take that first step of just reaching out to someone that you trust, an adult that you trust in your life, oftentimes that does lead you to eventually reaching, professional help that you need and can get you on the right path to healing.
Okay. Some parents avoid talking with their child's pediatrician about mental health because they think that the pediatric care is just limited to the physical concerns. Others feel uncomfortable discussing their child's emotional behavior issues with anyone, including the pediatrician. But pediatricians want to know if their patients are struggling. So it's kind of it's a,
Mhm.
but, pediatricians have tools like screening questions, information referrals that can help you access the help your child needs. So,
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Your pediatrician is not only there for your medical or your physical health, they are also trained to be able to identify and work with you around these mental health concerns as well and can get you to appropriate referral resources. So I know a lot of folks, they kind of isolate the two, like, oh, this is medical and this is mental health, but your PCP can, definitely help you with. Getting you to the right place for getting help with your mental health concerns. So, I encourage you to talk with your PCP, but obviously, if you're not comfortable with that or you haven't gotten the courage up to do that yet, there's all these different resources out there for you as
okay.
well. Alrighty. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we'll talk about when exactly to be concerned. So this is, if you've been experiencing some of those symptoms, you may have been looking at that list like, well, I've had that, I've felt that before, and you might be thinking, okay, well, does that mean that I need to get some professional help? Well, this is kind of how you know, and this can help you to kind of make that decision, or kind of think about if this is something that you need some professional help for. So the first thing is to look at is how intense your symptoms actually are. So how do those symptoms feel to you? If they are, if you think about like on a 0 to 10 scale, if you're kind of more towards where 0 is like not a problem and 10 is like very problematic or extremely distressing, if you're more towards that like 7, 8, 9, 10 range, you definitely want to be thinking about that this could be something that's more clinical that's going on. Also, with the duration of your symptoms, so if your symptoms have been going on and been pretty persistent for at least 2 weeks, and have been occurring like every day, all day, those kinds of things, that could represent, especially for depression, that could represent like an episode of depression. If you felt sad or down mood, no motivation, low energy, that's been going on like literally every day for 2 weeks, that could be a depressive episode as well. Other things or other ways to know if it's something that's more clinical is how much is getting in the way. So how much is it actually impacting your ability to function? If you're starting to see declines in your school performance, like your grades are dropping and you can't seem to get a handle on, getting caught up with everything. If you're, working, some of my teens work part-time or full-time. If you're having a hard time just functioning in that environment, getting to your job every day and not running late for work, that could also be a sign. And then, of course, your interpersonal relationships, if you find that you're having a lot of conflict, right? Like you're getting into it with parents, you're getting into it with your friends, you're getting into it with your significant other, like you have a hard time, with those relationships. And it seems like you're the common denominator, if that makes sense. If you're having difficulty in all of those relationships, sometimes that can be a big red flag that there might be something going on with your mental health as well. And then, of course, if you're engaging in any maladaptive coping, so that includes like the drug and alcohol use, any of the like unhealthy behaviors, like screaming, yelling at others, or lashing out, any of those kinds of things that would be considered maladaptive, and you're doing that is like your normal way of coping, then absolutely that would be a sign of some sort of mental disorder or mental illness that you definitely want to reach out about and get some help. So one thing I did want to hit on is what we call self-harming behaviors, or like the technical or official name for it is non-suicidal self-injury. So this typically starts during puberty between the ages of like 13 and 15. We'll start to see folks engaging in these types of behaviors. Self-harming is something that we don't really talk a whole lot about, but I thought it was important to hit on that during this presentation because we talk a lot about suicide prevention, right? We say, obviously, if you're having thoughts of suicide, don't kill yourself, don't harm yourself, get to safety. Oftentimes, what I find with my teenagers is that they're engaging in these self-harming behaviors, but it's not with the intent of dying. Like the objective is not to end their own life. The objective is just to cope with or manage some distress. So you may find folks who will cut themselves either on their wrists or their thighs or other areas where other people can't see. You may find that folks are scratching themselves to the point of bleeding or damaging the skin, hitting yourself, or interfering with healing. So if you have like a wound or a scratch that wasn't caused by self-injury, but this kind of is there, just keep reopening that wound so that it doesn't ever really heal up again. Other things actually can qualify under self-harming behaviors, things like if you're starving yourself or restricting your food intake significantly, that can, as a way of like self-punishment, that can also be a self-harming behavior. And the reason why it's important to talk about these self-harming behaviors, because while, individuals who engage in these behaviors, you yourself, or maybe you have a friend or you've heard of someone who's engaged in these behaviors, the reason why it's important to get help for these things is because although right now the goal may not be to end your own life, what we do tend to see is that teenagers who ultimately go on to commit suicide do kind of have this extensive history of these self-harming behaviors. So while, in the moment, if you are cutting, you may not have that thought process of like, I'm doing this because I want to end my life. But if you have a long sustained, history of this behavior, it is a, kind of a red flag or a big indicator that, later on, those folks who do ultimately end up committing suicide kind of have a little bit of a track record of these things. So it's always important to be aware. And if, like I said, if you've engaged in these behaviors, or if you know others who are engaging in these types of behaviors, certainly reach out and get help or get them help, because this is a big red flag that there is some serious maladaptive coping going on, and likely requires some professional intervention. All right. So when we think about good mental health, so how do we, how do we create good mental health in our lives or maintain good mental health? And so I'm going to give you some, kind of scientifically proven pointers or things that you can do, just daily habits that can help to build and keep your mental health on track. So one thing, and really, it's so important, but it doesn't really get a lot of attention, is your sleep hygiene. Having good sleep hygiene is super important. There are so many things that your brain does while you're sleeping to help you cope and manage with your stressors that a lot of people just neglect that. And I know for my teenagers, especially now, if you're doing the remote learning and like, or either doing like a blended, kind of learning environment where your schedule's kind of wonky. Some folks are actually having a hard time with sleep. Like their schedule is just kind of off right now. And you may find that with that, you may feel more stressed, more tired, even more depressed. And so you want to get your sleep schedule on track and you want to aim for maybe like falling asleep within a 1 hour window every day and waking up within that same hour window every morning. And you want to shoot for that like 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Some folks, require less sleep. Some folks require a little more. So you just kind of have to find like your optimal, number of hours of sleep, and then kind of make sure that you just stick to that schedule, even on the weekends, even on the holidays, even when there's not much going on and your routine changes. You still want to keep that same sleep schedule. Other things are just physical activity. So you do know that exercise boosts a chemical in your brain. It's called serotonin. Serotonin is a chemical that controls how you feel. So when you have enough of it, you feel good. When you don't have enough of it, you can feel depressed, anxious, and really overall not great. So exercise is a great way to boost your mood. So if you are, kind of feeling down and out or depressed or whatever, if you just go for a quick 20-minute walk or run or go for a bike ride, it actually is enough to kind of get that serotonin up and going so that you'll feel a lot better. Same thing goes with relaxation, just taking some time to do slow breathing, meditation, yoga. All of those things are great for boosting serotonin. Good nutrition, the brain needs good nutrition to help you to cope and manage. Your brain really does prioritize function. So if it's kind of short on, some nutrients that it needs, it will prioritize function. So it'll keep you alive, like your heart will be beating, your lungs will be breathing, your limbs will be coordinated and moving together. If you are not getting enough nutrients, it's not going to really do a good job of helping you with things like managing your anger or helping you to feel happy when you're sad. It's going to really prioritize those vital functions. So nutrition is super important. Give your brain what it needs to help you to cope. Other things are good time management. We talked about that before, like not avoiding your problems. So procrastination can be a good sign that you are, struggling with managing with some of your stressors. So just not procrastinating, developing a good routine for how you're getting things done. Feeling flexible in your thinking. So this is being able to be creative in the way that you're solving problems and thinking about your world. Having positive self-talk. So these are things like talking yourself up, basically. And I always tell folks, one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself is, I really call it fake it till you make it, but it's so true. If you say positive things to yourself and you talk yourself up enough, eventually you will start to believe it. So a lot of folks feel like, oh, I'm not going to say that because that's not true and that's not how I really feel. If you actually just start saying things like, I'm okay, I'm confident, I can do this, I feel like this is great, this is going well, eventually over time, you will start to feel it. And so it's so important to use positive self talk when you're starting to feel, kind of down or out or, and avoiding that negative self talk. And then, of course, taking breaks from your digital devices, just kind of giving yourself time away from the electronics. We do know that social comparison that a lot of people do on social media and things like that can create distress. So just taking some downtime from that and getting active can really help. And then, of course, seeking out emotional support from others when you need it. So on the right side of the screen, you'll see some just general like coping things. And so I think Catherine's going to walk us through, some specific things that you can do that kind of fall, or relate to some of the things that we talk about as far as those daily habits. But these are like some specific ideas for things that you can do.
Yeah, so a lot of these we talked about with the adaptive coping mechanism. So all of these are adaptive things you can do. So when we talk about exercise, Dr. Scott said, ride your bike, that 20-minute walk, those things will help to boost your serotonin. Listening to music that makes you feel better. And I always like to add that part because just listening to music doesn't always make you feel better. You had a breakup and you are listening to some Taylor Swift or what's her name? Jasmine Sullivan. Oh, she's busting windows out of cars and all of that. That's probably not what we need to listen to. But listening to some music that might make you feel better. That positive self-talk. I've given teenagers the idea Get you a dollar store mirror, get you some dry erase markers. Every morning, write something kind to yourself on it and repeat those things. I will have a good day. I am beautiful. I can make it. I will make a change. Just those things can help you to have a better day. And having a good morning can help you with a great start to your day. Crossword puzzles, Pinterest boards. My children love Pinterest boards. Interview a family member about things that have happened in the past and record it. I think that's one thing that a lot of families miss out on. And with that, asking about the past, that also might be able to help you figure out some things, some mental health history that has happened in your family. So maybe there's a history of mental illness and you don't know that. That can help with that also. Playing board games with friends and family, sharing your feelings with someone that you trust. Again, going back to talking to someone to get that help that you need. Meditate, maybe draw, paint, sculpt, visualize being in a peaceful place. I did take a vacation. I just had to get it out of here a few weeks back. But the other day I found myself just actually looking at the pictures, and that made me feel better. When I went there and I was in the ocean, I just felt so at peace, and just visualizing being there made me feel better. Take a shower or bath, have a dance party. At our house, we have one of those small globes that does the lights, and my 3-year-old son even says, "Come on, mommy, let's have a party." We turn on the music and we just have a good time. And in that moment, it takes you away from your stress and can make you feel better. Make a photo album, scrapbook, take a walk, watch a comedy special. A lot of comedians are now doing virtual comedy specials now because people can't get out. So that's available to you. You always have YouTube. Watch a movie, TV, kick a ball against the wall. On Grey's Anatomy, I never forgot, they have a bag of stuff, she called it. And it's just like soft things that you get from the Dollar Tree. And she was just tossing stuff at the wall, right? So whether it's a softball or maybe it's not a softball, but a ball that is soft, change that up so you're not putting holes in the wall. But throwing soft things at the wall just to kind of get some of that anger out. Stress balls, relaxing to nature sounds. Have you a good cry, get that cry out. Join boxing or martial arts. If you feel like you need to fight, you need to get that anger out, use it to something positive. Join a boxing class, volunteer, and then do some deep breathing, some mindfulness. So there are apps that you can use. You can go onto, again, YouTube and just put in mindfulness breathing, and it will do some of that visual. Some of them is visual. Some of them you can sit and close your eyes and just listen to the audio of them talk, just getting you through your stressful time. Also, one thing we didn't add on here, but I wanted to add, I know Dr. Scott says some scientifically proven things, but also just gratitude. Just being grateful for things can help you through a lot of stressful times. And some scientifically proven benefits of just gratitude alone is that it will open up doors to more relationships for you. It improves your physical and psychological health. It enhances your empathy. It reduces your aggression. It helps you to sleep better. It can improve your self-esteem, and it can also increase your mental health. So at the end of the program that we do, we just take time to be grateful. Write down those things you're grateful for, whether it's I woke up this morning, I am able to walk, I am able to breathe, I am able to see, right? Those small things that a lot of times we take for granted, we don't realize that some people can't do that. And yes, my day might suck today, and maybe my month is going really bad, but I have these things and I'm able to do these things. So just being grateful can help you through those stressful times.
So let me ask both of you, what is your favorite thing to do that's on this list?
Favorite thing? I have a couple of things that I like to do. So one is the dance. We love to dance here at our house. My kids are trying to get us to get a family, as they're looking at me through the door, get a family TikTok. And I'm leaning maybe towards it, but we love to dance. So that really helps us. And it helps bring our family together. So that's a big part of it also.
Yeah, I feel like for my family, it's definitely physical activity. So we go for walks, bike rides, nature walks. We are always out and about. You'll definitely see me if I've had a stressful day. You know where to find me. I'm either on the treadmill or outside, going somewhere. But yeah, definitely exercise. And I would also say just listening to music. I feel like music is so powerful in the way that it
Hmm.
affects your mood. And so like it's in the car, like you're on the way to work from work, like I'll have my my positive music going and it kind of really gets you revved up and, kind of pumped up and ready for your day. So I think those are definitely two big ones for me and really, really help to just kind of elevate your mood. And it provides like a physical relief of your stress
Hmm.
as well. Because I know some people are more physically, inclined to dealing with their stress and some people like more mental strategies. So if you're someone who likes more of a physical way of doing things, I definitely recommend, like Catherine was saying, like dance and exercise, all those kind of physical ways to get your stress out, but then also listening to music I think helps too because even sometimes like your heart rate starts to get up and getting that heart pumping is a great way to boost your mood as well, so yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
So DJ Vader, you didn't tell us what is some of your favorite things off the list.
I
Let me
mean,
guess, music, but okay.
okay, you got me. It's music. Our my family, we love music. It's not a moment of the day that we're not around that somebody is playing music, which prompts the dancing, which prompts the videotaping, which prompts laughter and giggling. We also like to play board games and watch comedy specials. It's coming around October, so we also like to watch scary movies and hide under the covers, stuff like that. But it all comes back to music. We love music in this house.
All right. So the most important thing that we said is getting help. So when it comes to getting help, we do have a few resources. This is a really big one because I know a lot of teens are always texting on the phone. They don't necessarily like to talk about their feelings, but if they text the word home to the number 741-741, 24 hours, 7 days a week, this is a crisis line with trained counselors that will be there to text back and forth. While I've done my program, I've had students actually do this in class, and they've showed me, they text me back. They said this, right? So you always have someone that is there and available if you don't want to have that, you know, vocal conversation and talk about your feelings. That's also available. The next one is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And I always say, I don't love that they call it the Suicide Prevention Lifeline because this is one of those, if you just need to talk to someone also, they are there. So if you do want to talk, they have the 1-800-273-TALK number. You can call that number. They do on their website also have the ability to do a live chat. So 24 hours again, 7 days a week there's someone that will always answer and always be there to help you. It's confidential, it's free. It can help with prevention, whether it's a crisis, you just need to talk. They are there for that.
Yeah,
And
and if
then
you
these
are,
numbers, yeah, go
well, I
ahead,
was going
Dr.
to say, if
Scott.
you are interested in taking that step, right? If you feel like you're ready to kind of reach out and get set up with a therapist or a counselor that you can work with one on one, definitely reach out to us here at Children's. The top number that you see there, that 4336 number, is just our regular intake line, so you can call them and they'll get you set up with someone that you can work with. We have providers at all of our different campuses, so out at Eastgate, Fairfield, Green Township, out at Liberty, where I am. Mason. So you can, kind of ask and see what location would be more convenient for you. But if you are ready to take that step, there are many, many providers just like myself who are very passionate about working with teens and kids. And, we care about the mental health of young people. And so we would be happy to work with you and to help you with whatever issues that you're having. So never, never, never fear to reach out. And it can be a little bit of a process to find the right provider, but once you do, it's really, really worth it. So I encourage you that if you have been touched or if you have, got anything from our presentation today that makes you feel like you want to reach out, then certainly access some of these resources and get the help that you need.
Okay. Um, we want to thank everyone for joining us. We truly, truly appreciate you. I believe this will be recorded and we'll be able to share this. We want to give a thanks to the First Ladies for Health, also the Center for Clinical and Translational Science and Training, in cooperation with Cincinnati Children's 1 in 5 and Cincinnati Recreation Commission. There's a poll that should be up on your screen. Make sure that you fill that out. And Dr. Scott and Catherine, thank you all. Thank you so much for giving this information out. And I'm hoping that you helped at least one person seek help and let them know that they're not alone.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.